Let me ask you along those lines, and I want to get to Matt Pottinger for in a minute, because he actually, as you described in the book, he actually liked Pottinger, trusted him. He was a China hawk. And so Donald Trump was getting this news not just from his fourth or fifth national security advisor, but from an aide that he trusted, whose instincts he trusted. So he knew it well. But I'm just curious, you talked about it being one of the most historic moments in the White House in history. I'm curious whether you agree with your former writing partner, Carl Bernstein, that these tapes, these Trump tapes, will be remembered historically as more significant than even the Nixon tapes.
Well, it's hard to compare them. I trust Carl's wisdom in this. He always is forward-leaning. Back when we were doing the Nixon reporting, he saw where this was going a year before, quite frankly, I did. So, you know, we're going to see about this. But one of the first things when I started talking to Trump, now this is December 5th last year, I went into the Oval Office and plunked my tape recorder. In fact, I have the tape recorder, an Olympus special. I plunked it down on the Resolute desk and said, this is all on the record. I'm going to record it. I want to find out what your policies have been. This was before the virus. And we went through North Korea. We went through all kinds for 9 hours. And it is a look into his mind. And one of the things you discover things, and it surprised me that the microphone is not just getting words, but it is a microscope. In fact, when you hear the inflections, the anxiety, when you hear the anger, when you hear the denial, and so there's something in those tapes which I have in the book. Probably almost 20% of the book is Trump talking about the virus, talking about the economy, talking about race relations, and you can see, and it's extraordinary. Now, you knew this when you knew Trump years ago, that he will subject himself to a kind of interrogation. So I was able to do that for 10 months, and you can not just see it, but you can hear this. When I say it's a microscope, it's a magnifying glass also. So you really observe the true Trump, I believe.
Now, let me ask you about, and then I pass it around the table, but I must say that obviously for reasons that we all understand, most of the focus has been on Donald Trump lying about how deadly this pandemic was to the American people and his supporters. But I must say that equally jarring to me was the first half of the book, where you walked us through each member of the national security team. You walked us through Mattis and Tillerson and poor Dan Coats. I mean, my God, these people were struggling. They all had the attitude that Meek and I heard from Dr. Brzezinski and Robert Gates and from General Hayden and from a lot of people who had been never Trumpers, who all said, we only have one president at a time. We've got to make this work. But my God, you reveal what they found out when they went in, and they soon learned he did not share their values. In fact, Dan Coats understood fairly quickly that everything that he had worked his entire life to promote as a conservative senator and then an ambassador, Donald Trump was undermining.
Yes. Now Dan Coats was the DNI, Director of National Intelligence, the number one intelligence official overseeing the CIA and the National Security Agency. And this was a man who, you obviously have read it, Joe. It's almost a book in itself, because this is a man who was a senator from Indiana for 16 years. He was retiring. He was offered this job by Trump and Mike Pence, the vice president-elect, and felt he could not say no. He went in with these Republican values and was stunned, shocked, and, in a way, just ground down by Trump's refusal to accept reality. And at one point in the book, I show how Mattis, who's the Secretary of Defense, and Coates are talking after a National Security Council meeting. And Mattis says that Donald Trump has no moral compass. And Coates says Donald Trump, the president, their leader, does not know the difference between a lie and the truth. And the struggle that these people who, they were in the latter phases of their life, said, okay, Donald Trump is calling. He promised that he would really deal with them in a direct, honorable way, and then they got in the job, and he pulled all of his stunts in a way that Trump did that led them to the point where, in Coates's case, his wife Marcia said to him, look, Dan, God put you in this job. You are failing not just the country and yourself, you're failing God, and you need to get organized. And he reorganized things. But again, Trump expelled him when it did not serve Trump's purposes.
And then, of course, Mika, Bob also writes that as Dan Coates' wife continued to say that he needed to do Jesus' work by staying in the Trump administration, they saw Donald Trump at one of his golf clubs. Trump gave him a funny look. And then as they were walking down a fairway, playing golf later, Dan Coates' aides rushed up to him and told him that he had been fired unceremoniously by Donald Trump by tweet.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.